Support the Twitchiest community by getting some new, fresh merch from our brand new merch store and help support the Twitchiest community and the Smite Twitchy League. So go ahead and check it out in the description down below and get yourself some STL merch, some Not Even Close merch, and of course, the classic Incon logo.
All tier. So this tier list is going to be the tier list of the Smite Twitchy League. So this is going to be all of the gods that have been performing from really good to really bad in the STL. I am not going to, I've got one singular gnat in this room. I am not going to influence the placement of the gods at all. I am simply going to take the data from the list and I am going to put them onto the tier list as such, based off of their November performance. So specifically how the tier list is going to be formatted is if a god was Masters tier, they will be considered S tier. If they were Diamond, they will be A. If they were Platinum, they will be B. If they were Gold, they will be C. And then if they were below Gold, they will be D. So that is how the list is going to be oriented. So Masters for S, then Diamond, then Platinum, then Gold, and then anything that was below Gold is how that is going to go ahead and work. So we're going to be starting off with our first two gods. Only two gods managed to make it into the Masters tier. And that is going to go ahead and be our boy Cupid. Thank you, me, dude, for the prime. Cupid makes sense. Cupid was one of the top Elo characters. He was the #1 hunter in the top 5 hunter series. And so it makes sense why he is up here. Cupid is just simply really good in this meta right now. Having the ability to have that much CC, particularly when hunters are not, a lot of not CC immunity hunters are meta. It's just the way that she goes. Is Nami really prominent? Cupid Rex is Nami. You've got Uller and you got all these guys that just kind of get wrecked by Cupid, which means he just goes ahead and Rex over in the duo lane. And then our only other Masters rank god for November, once I can find her, because I gotta think about this. Oh god, I don't know where it is in the alphabet. There she is, Mulan! Mulan was actually the #1 god in our entire STL series. Extremely popular pick. And also, not only did she win a lot, but when she was losing, her losses were close, which also matters a lot in these in this particular tier list. So doing good and winning is important, but also when you're losing, having the game be close when you're losing also helps out these gods. Mulan pretty much always performs. She just pretty much always performs. Like, even when she's on the losing team, it's almost never Mulan's problem. And so that is why those are our two Masters tiered gods. Next up, we've got another hunter. These are also going to be directly in order. Once I do it this way, I'll flip them this way. I'm also going to, it's going to be directly in Elo order from left to right as well. So that way you can be like, okay, Mulan was #1, Cupid was #2, etc. Then you go down to the next tier, boom, next tier, boom. So it's going to be exactly in that Elo order. Next up, our first diamond god is going to be the Izanami, another hunter. As it turns out, when crit is really good, hunters are really good and they tend to be able to carry games. Izanami has a hard matchup into Cupid, but when Cupid isn't around, Izanami goes ahead and tends to crush it over here. She's got so much early game lane clear, she doesn't really have to worry about anything. You know what I'm saying? She's got so much. Then we've got ourselves our first assassin onto the list. It's Tsukiyomi. Tsukiyomi is just a menace in the jungle. He was pretty much the #1 jungler all season long. He just kind of ended up, he runs around the jungle. He's got ranged autos on an assassin in a power-based assassin meta where all of the items are perfect for him. And he basically can't be hurt during the actual casting part of his ultimate, which can hit up to 12 times. So it's like 1,500 damage on 3 people while you're immune is pretty good. Thank you, Gal. What's up, Jeezy, dude? It's pretty good. I wish I had one more monitor right now. Oh, you know what I can do to make this easier on my life? I think I can do this. One sec. I was about to say, I think if I can just, and then, and then I come over here, and then if I do this, this is the way to do this. Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is way better. Oh, yeah, this is way easier for me now. Cool. I can actually see things. Next up, we had our #1 mage who maintained it all the way to the very end. It's your girl, Skilla. Skilla was just kind of dominating in the mid lane. She was a very popular pick. Not only was she a popular pick, she was winning quite a bit. And still it does make sense because she can carry at all levels of gameplay. All of these gods, something that's kind of familiar between them is you can see the fact that they can all carry games kind of by themselves. You know what I'm saying? Like they have the ability to just show up and win the game outright if their particular role tends to get ahead. Now, probably my least favorite part of this list is going to be how far high up this character is, but unfortunately, it just makes sense during this meta, and that is going to be Loki. Loki is simply a hard-to-kill jungle. He's got a lot of capabilities to get away. He loves Jotun's Wrath and the Transcendence or Hydras. He can even get away with going a kind of a meme crit build that's honestly not even bad. At the end of the day, he's a power-based assassin in a power-based meta who has really easy, straightforward ganking potential with a cripple stun on his ulti. It's just very strong right now. Surprisingly, we do get our first Guardian up on the list, and it's going to be Aries. Aries making himself kind of known out in the STL. Has a really good win rate, actually, for a Guardian, and has also become a very popular pick. And it also makes sense because if you're going to have to play support and you want to carry from the support role, who are you going to pick? You're going to pick the most damaging support, right? You're going to pick the most damaging Guardian, which is going to go ahead and be Aries. So it makes sense why he is so high up on the list. On the exact opposite side of Aries, for the reason why they are good, it is going to be Athena. Athena, the exact opposite of Aries, she carries by just setting up the team all around the map all the time and never being out of position. You've got a Scylla on your team in mid who's doing really well. Congratulations. You just free taunt into an AoE cripple into the Scylla ultimate. Their whole team is dead and now you've won the game. Your solo laner isn't playing so well. They're out of position. Congratulations. You can ulti all the way over from duo lane and save their life. She's got the capability to carry anybody all around the map. Then we've got ourselves Raven. Where's Raven? There's Rama. Sorry, Rama, not you. It's your pal Raven. Raven's going to be all the way up in here. Raven has so many forms of CC immunity, and that's kind of always going to be his extremely strong point. An ultimate that has CC immunity plus is a really good movement. Plus his 2, which is basically Chang'e 2 if Chang'e 2 also did damage. On top of the fact that he has a built-in little shield. On top of the fact that you're going to have beads. On top of the fact that you might even have a Magi's or a Mantle of Discord. You've got 3 minimum forms of CC immunity, upwards of 5, which means that all of these gods that you're looking at Cupid wants to cripple you. Nope, doesn't care. Scylla wants to ult you. Nope, doesn't care. Aries wants to pull you. Nope, doesn't care. You can see how well he does against the other gods that are at the top of the list, which makes him a super good counter pick. Not a counter pick. I don't care what you're playing, I am still going to do just fine and dandy. It is Chalk. Chalk is a very good solo laner at all levels of gameplay and is most reflective of the fact that the STL includes all walks of life, from the tippity top of Grandmasters all the way down to Bronze. Chalk is just a fantastic solo laner to put in the game when you don't know what to pick. You're like, hey man, maybe I'm not comfortable with the solo lane. Hey man, I haven't played this a lot, or I don't know this matchup. What do? You pick Chalk. He clears really easy. You never have to worry about it. You don't fall behind. If you get ganked, super easy to live on Chalk. And he transitions well into the late game. You can just become a CC bot if you need to. Giant knockup, giant silence, etc. Then in a hyper carry meta, you've got to have your Khepri in order to keep you alive. Khepri, his entire reason why he's in the top right now is the fact that he keeps the hyper carries alive. There's so much damage in the assassin role, in the ADC role, in the mid lane nowadays. As long as Khepri can keep you alive, you can get your damage off and also let you play even more aggressive, knowing that you have the capability to get saved. Khepri is basically like Geb, except for Geb is always banned, so you can't play him, right? Can't play Geb if he's always banned. Turns out he can't win very many games if he's not allowed to play the game, as it turns out. Then we've got Oleron. Oleron is kind of a sneaky one. I would say one of the more surprising guys that rose up the ELO ranks in terms of the STL. Oleron really came in after, you know, some of those like crit spectral changes happened. And now that spectral doesn't work against Oleron, and you have the ability to get the Book of the Dead build going while maintaining a lifesteal build. You can really easily get like a Hecate and a Book of the Dead and kind of do this hybrid build. It is really hard to kill Oleron. Like, really hard. For not having a getaway skill, it sure do feel like he's got a getaway skill. And he's been performing really well, particularly in the mid lane, but also as an ADC. Then we got ourselves Ganesh. The Ganesh pillars is really kind of what has made him strong. Pillars have always been good, and if you get the right Dharmic pillars in the middle of a team fight, you basically win the game for your team. It slows, it does a bunch of damage, it's a protection shred, and it's a body block all in one, and it's on a really low cooldown, particularly once you get your Pridven online as a support, which means it is up for every single possible engagement, whether it's a 1v1, 2v2, or whether it's a full-blown 5v5. On top of that, fairly safe support as well because of his dash being able to get through walls. He doesn't have a lot of counters on that front as well. So he's a pretty safe support and a very good support. Then we've got one of my favorites, Baba Yaga. Baba Yaga makes sense that she has come back into the meta with all of the stacking going on, particularly with the Book of Thoth that you're trying to get stacked so you get the massive big shield for Book of the Dead. Makes sense that she would come back into the meta. She also has the opportunity to grab a Warlock Staff if she wants to, or even grab a Karen's coin. A lot of other gods can't afford to get like a Karen's coin right now because it's so late in the game. By the time you're getting pen, you end up getting like an Ob shard if you want the 20% pen. But Baba's like, I don't care. I'll just get a Karen's coin and walk by my house and it'll already be 25% stacked. So the change of builds has helped out Baba a lot. Has helped out Baba a lot. All right. Next up and last on our diamond. It's the god that we don't have. It's Cleodonia. This tier list doesn't include Cleo. It goes all the way up to Cherry. So Cleo is the last god up in diamond. She actually was winning in multiple roles. She had a good win rate in both jungle and in the solo lane. She was one of the only gods that almost made it onto 2 different lists, top 5 lists in terms of her. It's actually kind of RP that Cleo, you can't see her. Get it? Because she's in the wall. Ooh. Ooh, spooky. But Cleo just doing really well. If you've been hit by a Cleo ultimate, you understand why she's doing so well. If you're a squishy, it basically does 30% to 40% of her HP. She's got 2 of those. And then she still has all of the rest of her abilities, which also do a bunch of burst damage. And she might have been in a wall the entire time. So it's like, it's not so unbelievable, no, is it? All right, down into our platinum tier. We have got Nike going to be topping the list. Just didn't quite make it into that diamond level. She was kind of hovering right around it all season long. Still had very good games. Still performing very well over in the solo lane. But not quite enough. She's also received some nerfs lately. She got that minus cooldown from her, or not cooldown, but the minus duration on her barrier. So it's only 4 seconds instead of 6 seconds. Sunder is still a very good counter to her, but she does have very good lane clear. Pretty much always wins on that front, outside of gods that have a way to interrupt her, like the Mulan, who does have a very easy way to go ahead and interrupt her. So you do have to still be conscious and aware of gods that can interrupt you out of your ren. You got to be careful about that. Got to be careful. Then we got ourselves Sylvanas. Sylvanas did himself really well. He's got the early game lane clear that does so good. He's got the sustain. He's been working really well with Lotus Crown, even though it got nerfed. Who cares? He's just generically having himself a good meta. And so his lane has been going pretty dang nice. Then we got ourselves a Gilgamesh. I have no idea where he is. There he is. Got ourselves a Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh works once again in multiple roles. He can be played in the jungle or in the solo. Either way, he's been working well in both of those. And if you watched our Gilgamesh game earlier, you saw that what you build on Gilgamesh doesn't even really matter. You can even make him work with crit, as we so happened to find out. But Gilgamesh, just his baseline abilities are simply good. There's just no way around it. His abilities are flat out good. He's got a lot of CC, he's got a lot of mobility, and he hits hard all the time. And so, unless he got some sort of kit change, he'll probably always be good. Probably always. Then we got what I would say is the most surprising pick that made it this high. This would be number 19, so making it into the top 20. And that is going to be Kali, wherever Kali is in the world. Kali, where are you? I don't know where K is in the alphabet. There's so many pictures. There she is. Kali is kind of a direct result of STL games being longer than regular Smite games. Regular Smite games are literally like 5 minutes in and out, F6, or get, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like the game is over before it ever begins. That's just the way the Smite has been for a long time. But in the STL, the games are a lot closer. The games are going a lot longer. On average, the games are going 30 minutes. Which means that Kali has the ability to actually come online in the STL, which is why she has been doing so well, because you do get her to that ultra late game stage where Kali really gets to shine. And so she's kind of a direct result of the games actually being more competitive. Then we've got ourselves Hercules. Hercules, another god that does well in multiple roles. We have seen him do well over in support and solo. Specifically, he makes for a very aggressive support, plays out kind of similar to Aries in that fashion, but of course he also works over in that solo lane. Against Hercules, you've always got to be careful about your positioning because he can just bring you so far out of position. You also have to buy anti-heal against him pretty early, so he can also mess up the build paths for certain gods. If you have to grab that early Divine Ruin and now you don't have the Book of the Dead, now all of a sudden maybe you're more susceptible in the mid lane just to try to make him more susceptible. So he does mess up people's build paths. Then we've got ourselves Achilles. Achilles kind of been played everywhere in this meta. He's been finding himself all over the place. Support a couple of times, solo, over in the jungle. He seems to be just kind of a one-pick fits all right now. Having an execute basically allows him to do that. Makes him obviously a fantastic counter pick against Khepri because he just ulties right through the Khepri ult and you don't get the res. But on top of that, generically good stats. Passively can be really tanky or passively can be really aggressive depending on if you're shirt on or shirt off. Which just lets him fulfill into a bunch of different roles and doesn't really have a weak spot right now in this meta. Yamir is higher. Good for Yamir making it up here. Yamir, of course, being played in that support role. That is mostly where he is finding himself. Being able to wall off people, always going to be very strong for you. You get to wall off God, they're out of position. Now they go ahead and die. Bada bing, bada boom. There's really not too much craziness for the Yamir. He literally just goes ahead and walls them off. And that is the end of that. Ymir wall is good. Speaking of walls are good, it's Yamoja. Kind of similar. One, walls are good, but also Yamoja can be a very fluctuating pick. She can perform really, really well. And she can perform really, really not well. So depending on who exactly is on the Yamoja can very much impact her gameplay. Also, she has been nerfed like 89 times in a row. So she kind of hovers between people don't want to play her because she's been nerfed so much, and also like sometimes banned because people just don't want to deal with her ultimate. So she kind of lives in this like weird in-between zone type situation. This weird in-between zone. Then we've got Agni. Agni has really come back pretty strong with his increase in the combustion damage. It's really helped him out a lot. And so his damage output is one of the singular best out of all the mid laners. It's like the thing that he really does well. And he's honestly pretty safe as well with his dash. His biggest problem is mostly that he doesn't have CC immunity built into his kit. So some gods can really mess him up. Then we've got ourselves Discordia. Discordia, another god that has done really well. Not as many games played, I would say, as a lot of the other gods. But when she does get played, she is winning quite a bit. Honestly, a lot of Discordia comes down to the fact that she has a surprisingly good movement ability. The fact that it gives you that cooldown is one of the more underrated facets of any Smite kit, particularly in the late game. If you have a Chronos pendant on top of it, your 1 and your 2 cooldowns while you're sitting in it, you can get them off like 2 to 3 times within like 6 seconds, which is absurd. And she does have that built-in CC immunity. And of course, there's no reason why you can't play her with that Book of the Dead build that everybody is running right now. Then we've got ourselves a Medusa, not a Medusa, but just a good old-fashioned ADC Dusa. Been doing really well over there. Medusa loves all the options right now for hunter builds. Depending on the variation that you're running, you're either doing like a Jotun's Wrath start, a Crusher start, or a Ichivol start. Honestly, she can work with any of them. She has the ability to change her build path depending on how you want to go. I would say that the Fail Not buff also very recently has helped her out quite a bit. She does kind of fall in between the zone of like really good auto attacker, but also has some really gnarly abilities. And she's going to be getting buffed adjacent with the change from the anti-heal from her 3 to her acid spray, which means that she's going to be even more comfortable starting pretty soon. Then we've got ourselves a little Cerberus. Cerberus has really been prominently over in the support role in the SDL, but he's also doing well in solo. Cerberus's really big purpose is just to stop all the healers. Whether it's a traditional healer like an Aphrodite or a Hel, or if it's something that's a little bit more off-healery like a Sylvanas or even like Oleron between his build and stuff. Having the built-in anti-heal on Cerberus is super important. And the fact that if he's over in solo lane, he can easily get away with going the Tainted Steel, which basically means between the Cerberus passive, a Tainted Steel, and one aura item, you're doing like 100% anti-heal, so you don't actually have to worry about mostly anybody else even itemizing for it. What's up, C? Tier lists make my mouth dry. All right. Then we've got ourselves a Chronos making himself up here. He's doing respectably well. Chronos, believe it or not, has benefited from the Book of the Dead build. Because Chronos has 2 lives, it means that he basically has 3 lives now. Because you got your Chronos regular life, and then you ulti to get another life, and then your Book of the Dead procs, and you've got a 3rd life. So you basically just straight up have all these additional lives. Lord forbid you got a Capri on your team. Now you've got a 4th life. He can be very frustrating to try to kill right now in this current meta. And part of the ability to have a really hard time focusing him down is what has brought him up this far. Then we've got the healer anti-healer with Chang'e. She's kind of the best of both worlds in that she provides the healing for your team, but she also provides the anti-healing for the enemy team. So she gets to live right in that in-between zone where you get to win games because you're adding more sustain to your team so you can do objectives, but you're also taking away from the enemy's sustain in team fights. Once again, doesn't have to focus as much on those anti-heal items, even though the Divine Ruin has been buffed lately. Then we get ourselves the Cherry. Cherry has been an interesting god in that her win rate isn't as high, I would say, as you would think. But she always seems to be getting herself involved and getting herself into really close matches. So she's having a lot of games where if they don't win, they're like really long matches that are super close to being won, and then something goes wrong in a late game team fight. So she has kind of slithered her way up into here. Also, Cherry, just a solid pick over in the duo lane. Very, very hard to kill. So if you want to pick a hunter, if you're afraid of getting focused, between her 3 and her ultimate, so much CC immunity, so much bonus movement speed, really easy to get away on Cherry, which also lets you make maybe more dumb aggressive plays than you can get away with on some other guys. Then we've got ourselves the Morrigan. Morrigan has definitely been getting noticed at various levels of gameplay. She's even getting nerfed a little bit on her stealth duration. And that is because on top of the fact that she could one-shot you in her mage form, she then can go ahead and transform into basically a frontliner, oftentimes turning into a solo laner, and then all of a sudden, now you've got to go deal with the second Achilles fighting you. Lord forbid, something like a second Cthulhu will provide a lot of problems in your life. She's doing well at kind of all levels of gameplay, from like SPL all the way down. All the way down. You know what I'm saying? All the way down, all the way down. Then we have got ourselves, I lost myself, where's my place in the list? Then we got a soul coming in at number 32. Soul, another god that's kind of been having some ups and downs. Definitely doing herself better in the mid lane than she was doing anywhere else. Doing okay over in the ADC, but mostly in mid lane, kind of like Oleron, same concept, did okay in ADC, but mostly that mid lane where a lot of that action is coming from, and a lot of that just comes down from the fact that they're just simply hard to kill. It's also a great way to get magical damage on your team if you're lacking a little bit of magical damage. Then we've got ourselves the tier list man himself. It's a Tier. Tier's been doing well over in the solo lane. He's kind of just a safe pick in that chalk vein of like, hey, I don't know what to pick. What do? I don't want to lose lane. Tier doesn't have anything crazy that counters him outside of like Ardio, who's like the go-to. You know, Ardio has the cripple for like the Tier and the Arthur, but Ardio isn't getting played that much. Which means that as long as it's specifically not the Ardio over in solo, the Tier has been doing really well. A lot of lane clear, a lot of sustain. You just love the Cleo first, and you just kind of get to turn your brain off. Plus, of course, you have the CC immunity ultimate and a ton of movement. And at the end of the game, you're just W-king and blinking and ulting at their backline and trying to pull them out of position. If you play Tier, here's the scum. I don't know if that's true. Then we've got ourselves the Bastet. Bastet's a little bit weird. She has recently become kind of a new god. And so she kind of had a little splitsies on this month. New kit is obviously really, really strong. But because her new kit's also really, really strong, she's also getting banned a lot. So she's not able to be played that much right now, which is kind of affecting her a little bit on the chart. Also because she's kind of brand new. She kind of came in through like halfway through the season type of thing. But I do expect her to move up the list in December, assuming that she doesn't maintain a ridiculously high ban ratio. I would say she's one of a few gods that has been affected by having a much larger ban rate. Then we've got ourselves the Hunbats. Hunbats and the Morrigan have been making a kind of showing together. They've been making kind of a showing together of a little wombo combo where you get Hunbats ulted once, and then the Morrigan goes ahead and turns into Hunbats, and then all of a sudden you're getting a Hunbats ulted again. This seems to be a very frequent combo that is getting run right now. So you have to watch out for that Hunbats action. Then we've got an Apollo. Apollo is full map pressure. It's what's been helping him out a lot. His ability to split push, as well as rotate over to fight, means that he can go ahead and split push a Phoenix. Then he can chillax ulti over to the fire giant, bada bing, bada boom. He gets to be in both places at the same time, essentially. For the most part, just a better version of Chernobog. Now, somebody that has also gotten buffed and has been moving up in the ranks has been Xbalanque. Xbalanque, ever since they increased kind of his baseline stats, have been moving him up a lot. His baseline attack speed, his baseline power have all been really hard for the enemy hunters to deal with. His auto attack damage now is very strong, particularly if he decides to go like the Ichivol build path. It can be really, really hard in order to fight the Xbalanque in the 1v1. And of course, he still provides that ultimate for the team. Xbalanque always gets a hard time, but turning off the enemy monitor will always be a strong ability, particularly the better the players are in the match, the more impactful that it is. Then we get ourselves a little Odin. Odin has not had as strong of a showing as you would think. His win rate is very much okay. He probably has the highest, I would say, ban rate to okay win rate. He is very good situationally at blocking gods that don't have those leaps, and he limits the god pools a lot, which means a lot of people want to ban him so they don't have the limited picks. But when he is getting played, he is performing decently, but we're pretty close to like middle-ish of the list. So not something that, you know, is entirely running games or anything, you know? Then we have Cubragen, which actually kind of makes sense being here by this Odin. Cubragen basically provides the same type of thing that Odin does, which is he walls you off and he limits your god pool. He really, really sucks to go against if you either don't have a leap or a getaway skill at all, because he comes in and he trembles you and bop, 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 bop. And then you just kind of sit there and you die. He does have the ability to go into a couple of different roles. He has, you know, the solo action, obviously, but he's also had a little bit of jungle and support. So at least he does have some of that capabilities of playing in multiple roles. After Cubragen, I do believe we have number 4D. We do. And it's going to be Ram. It's going to be the Rama, wherever he is. Rama, where are you? I found him. It's okay. I found the Rama. Rama, not too shabby right now. The builds all kind of go into his kind of style. Rama has one of the best, if not the best, baseline auto attacks in the game. And because crit is so meta right now, whether you're seeing Wind Demon or Fail Not or Deathbringer, Rage, doesn't really matter. If you get to level 20 with Rama and you've got arrows that can crit in a line and go through people, you're gonna bring the hurt. On top of that, because there's so much power, it also means that his ultimates get hit for like 1k in the late game. So if you get like one crit on somebody and then ulti, they can't really beat you in the 1v1 because you're untargetable and you can just finish them off right beneath your little toesies. Then we have got Tiamat. Tiamat, it makes sense, her being more down here. She's an extremely difficult mage to play. And so people want to play as her because they know that she's good, but then they can struggle a little bit because she does have a very, very high skill cap, which means that you can just kind of willy-nilly pick her unless you have had some practice, which kind of brings her down here because she's got a lot of different things that she needs to do in order to maximize her play style. So I think she's down here simply because of the complicated nature of her kit. Then we've got Xing Tien. We're getting close to the end of the Platinum God. We're getting close. Then we've got the Xing Tien. Xing Tien mostly being played as a support. He's kind of the support version of Chalk. Hey, I don't know what to play as a support. I'm not really comfortable with this role. What do? You pick Xing Tien. His double leap really helps him stay alive and not be out of position. Plus, of course, he has the CC immunity built into his ultimate, which also gives you a little bit of leeway on that front. Then we've got Thanatos. I'm actually surprised that Thanatos is even in the top half of gods. Haven't seen a lot of him personally in my STL games. And you would think that with the games being a little bit longer, that would actually hurt Thanatos more than it has. But at the same time, having an execute is always strong, particularly in a meta where everybody is hitting so hard. Being able to hover above the air and come down and execute, particularly with like Khepri doing so well in the meta and stuff, it could be a direct result of him being kind of a counter pick over there for those Khepri team comps. Then we've got ourselves some Wheelish. Wheelish has just kind of generically been good all year long. You don't have to pair people with her. Sometimes people think you have to like throw in a perfect knockup comp in order to make her work, but like a good Wheelix player will find the knockups on her own with their 3. It's obviously more convenient to have some more knockups on your team, but a Wheelix is going to do plenty of work on her own. And of course, power builds is all up in a Wheelix's business. I think she can get the highest power of any physical god in the game because of her ultimate. I think she actually has the ability to get the highest physical power of any god in Smite. Just a little Wheelix tidbit there. Then we've got the King Arthur. Arthur has dropped off a lot in the meta in the past kind of year or so. Still annoying, still really good damage in the lane. Obviously, he has the same kind of tier problem where like if an RDO shows up or a team with a bunch of cripples like the Aries and stuff, you're gonna have a bad time. But in general, as long as you're kind of comfortable with Arthur, he still has really good lane clear. He still transitions into the rest of the game. And he was really good at kind of abusing the Warrior's Axe, which just got nerfed. But he was also really good at making that an absolutely fantastic item because he would always proc it the second that it was up because Arthur doesn't have to worry about not having an ability cooldown up. Then we get ourselves a little bit of Neath action, wherever she may be, down here on the board. I literally have no idea. If there's a Nox here, Neath's got to be close. There she is. We got ourselves the Neath, and she actually did about equal in the ADC and mid-roll. So just a little bit of viability for her in some different roles. I would imagine that Neath comes down a lot to somebody wanting to be able to participate, but not wanting to have to be too close to the fight. I think a lot of her World Weaver is influencing her position here, being able to participate in those team fights without necessarily having to rotate and still having an impact on the game. And then we've got our last 3 gods to bring themselves up into Platinum tier, and that is going to be Zeus. Zeus, another god that has very recently gotten buffed and a lot stronger. So I suspect him to rise up in the ranks for the December season of the STL. but he so recently got those changes where he got better in the mid lane. And he simply wasn't getting played at all before that point, because why would you have played Zeus before his buff? But he is making himself certainly a lot more known. And as people get more comfortable with him having that bonus movement speed and stuff, I suspect that he will do much better in the December STL. Then we've got ourselves Susano. Susano may say that he does not have the ability to 100 to 0 you, but as it turns out, as long as you give assassins all the power items in the world, they can go ahead and 100 to 0 you. And Susano is really liking that, on top of the fact that he has a bunch of CC on his kit. And finally, our last god that made it into the platinum tier before the end of the split was Chiron. Surprisingly, Chiron getting himself all up in there. I imagine that this a lot comes because of his kind of safety. Ever since they had buffed up his giddy up to where it was knockback immune, he's actually a very safe hunter. He's got multiple forms of CC immunity in his kit with his cleanse, which is also a really good teamfight ability if used defensively. But he also has the CC immunity on his ult, and of course, the ability to res himself. All right, now we are down into probably what is the majority of the gods. These were gods that were in the gold tier. They were either not prioritized kind of by the community. These are definitely gods that have the higher in general play rates. The gods down in the gold tier are gods that are a little bit more off meta for the most part. A little bit more of tertiary picks with a couple of few exceptions. And so these gods just weren't as favored by the community, and you obviously can't gain elo if you don't really get played, with I think the notable exception of maybe 1 or 2 gods that we'll get into a little bit. So next up we have the Aphrodite. So Aphrodite was doing pretty well. There was this kind of healer meta thing that was happening, but now it's kind of not happening-ish anymore because of the nerf to the out-of-combat healing with the Brawlers debuff. So, like, she kind of had her moment, but she's kind of falling back off again. And so I have a feeling that she probably won't do any better in the next month. Then we've got Cthulhu over in the solo lane. Cthulhu, one of the premier solo lane guardians. It just doesn't happen to be a super guardian-centric solo lane meta right now. Definitely been more leaning into the warriors over in the solo lane, both in popularity and generally in the win rates as well. Then we've got ourselves some Hu Yi. Oh god, where's Hu Yi? I found him. Hu Yi, a little bit more of a more complicated hunter to play. Being able to really do that kind of beautiful mind quick math on the ricochets can be a game changer for him. I would slightly suspect within the recent patches with the increase to like the fail not buff and stuff, and with how good he does against crit because of his passive, I've got a feeling we could start to see him rise a little bit more back up in the December STL, as long as people get a little bit more on the kind of like anti-crit passive hype train. Next up, we've got ourselves Uller. This one actually makes a lot of sense. Uller historically, a lot like Tiamat, where when you've got the master Uller players on Uller, it tends to be really oppressive. But in general, he tends to be a harder god for people to actually play. And because he tends to be a harder god for people to play, it means that he's got really big highs and really big lows. He kind of is in that Yamoja Tiamat kind of range where it's like at their pinnacle, they can be crazy, but like on average, they end up doing okay, you know? Fun fact, in case you're wondering, we're moving on to god number 54, and that's gonna be Ra. Ra is like, he felt like he was so close to being on the verge of greatness because he has the healing in his kit. But just having the healing wasn't enough for the Ra. He seemed to just barely be outside of that meta range. Poor guy. Poor guy. I got nothing else to say other than poor guy. Then we've got the Danzaburo. Danzaburo wasn't the most popular of hunters. I think that he was really popular when he came out. And then he got a couple of slaps around here and there. And because of that, he's a little bit of a slower paced hunter. His late game can still be really gnarly. Like if you rocket into a fight and then you use the fail knot, that can still actually be super good. But his 1v1s over in the duo lane do seem to be struggling a little bit, which is hurting him. Honestly, surprised to see Eset this far up. I'm even surprised that she's in like the halfway marker. But Eset did okay. I would say that her being nearly in the middle is actually not a bad showing for her. Her lack of having any sort of getaway skill really hurts her. She can try to use her entire kit to get away, you know, with the stun and the silence and stuff, but like, she just has a really, she just has a really hard time. She has great lane clear, but the junglers get to mid so fast that having great lane clear doesn't matter a ton. Doesn't matter a ton. Then we've got ourselves the Daji, moving herself right on up. Daji, a little bit more of a niche pick, tends to do really well against compositions when she's in a late game picking scenario, if you get the 4th, 5th picker. Because she gets to go against gods without the CC immunity. She does really well as a counter pick into gods that don't have CC immunities built into their kits. Which means you want to pick her later on in the game. Go ahead and force those beads. Speaking of a beads forcer, it's your girl Nox. Nox, basically a beads forcer. Didn't get a lot of gameplay. Turns out she doesn't really provide a lot of consistent damage output in the mid lane. Also, the Book of the Dead build doesn't make a ton of sense on her because she really needs to go immediately into the early cooldown, which means she's just slightly outside of her comfort range, slightly outside of the meta. Then we've got Kuzenbo. Kuzenbo, I think, is on the verge of actually being really good. I think the biggest problem for Kuzenbo is that he's definitely a solo lane guardian in his heart of hearts. But it's not really a guardian meta over in the solo lane, kind of like we talked about, which means that he doesn't really have a home right now. But everything that he does with the reflect damage and the ability to grab a thorns and the ability to do really good against crit means that he's like one helpful guardian patch away from being a gnarly solo laner and just W king at the hunters. Next up, we got ourselves a little Sir Crits. Sir Cat has been hovering around the OK marker for quite a while. She can go into the crit builds. You know, she can get away with like a Malice Deathbringer style situation. The Jones is okay on her, but really she had been popular for like months and months and months as a support assassin, which is just not possible for her to do anymore. And that really kind of dropped her out of the meta, you know. Then we've got the Nuwa. Nuwa, another guy that doesn't get a whole lot of gameplay, and a lot of that just comes down to the fact that she's not a very safe mid laner. And being a not very safe mid laner right now is problematic. Very susceptible to being ganked before she gets level 2. Her level 1 lane clear is okay. And you can't get away with having okay level 1 lane clear right now. Then we've got the Bacchus boy himself. Not a particularly popular support, but I do imagine to see his pick rate go up quite a bit in the next patch. That has nothing to do with him getting any better, but simply the fact that he will have an Iroh skin, and having an Iroh skin will make people want to play him more and play him better. I've got a strong feeling. Then we got the Wukong over in solo. Ever since that meta dropped off, where like for a little bit there was like Soul Eater solo lane meta. That's like where Wukong did really good. And then once we kind of left that Soul Eater solo lane meta, Wukong just kind of dropped off in his effectiveness. He likes a little bit more aggressive play style over in the solo lane. And right now it's really more so of like the beefy Warrior's Axe kind of type of god that are really doing well. Also, Bluestone is kind of schmeh, and he's also a prominent Bluestone user, which hurt him. Then we've got your girl Artemis coming in. She's got the CC immunity on her ulti. Will always be a force to reckon with in the later stages of the game. But honestly, her susceptibility in the early game, not just to like jungle ganks, but to just straight up getting run at in the duo lane. If they're just rocking an her Yamir, you get walled off and impaled and you're just dead. And there's just nothing that you can do. And her biggest problem will always be the fact that she needs to try to like actually get out of the early game, and that can be really hard for her. Then we've got ourselves some Osiris. Osiris, not super his meta right now. You'll see him at really high level gameplay. Like SPL sometimes get run in the jungle. But he hasn't gotten almost any jungle gameplay in the STL, almost entirely over in the solo lane. In his solo lane, just the build isn't for him right now. He likes those more auto-attacking style items, the Berserker shields of the world, just like a Bologna. And those items are just not competing with the straight up more cooldown builds with like the mystical mail and that kind of stuff. So he's really just getting outperformed on the build path that would be optimal for him. Then we've got ourselves the Guan Yu. Guan Yu still provides some sustain for the team. So he's nice in that regard. His Talu Assault recently got buffed, but it is easily interruptible. So if you pick Guan Yu first, you're very susceptible to having to go against somebody like a Mulan. And then you're just getting interrupted out of your Talu Assault again and again and again and again, and so you don't really have any lane clear. Thank you, Be More and Meaty Clackers, do appreciate it. And so that is kind of Guan Yu's problem right now. Then we've got the AMC. Almost just very little games played on the AMC. Nobody really had the confidence to start whipping him out. He has gotten buffed lately. He has gotten buffed lately, but that's been pretty recently as well. And so having to pick the AMC is a bit of a confidence pick, and the confidence right now of the Hunters does not seem to be there on the AMC. Then we've got the Pele, who ended up actually with a exactly 50-50 ratio with 10 wins and 10 losses. Pele's doing fine. I mean, she is, I've described her as the worst of the best junglers in that she is an ability-based jungle, but she's kind of just not as good at it as all of the other ability-based junglers are. So she's better than a lot of the auto attackers who, like, the build doesn't make any sense for them, but she kind of is like, she's like the least cool kid at the cool kid table, or the coolest kid at the not cool table, whatever way you'd like to think about her. Now the next god is very interesting because I think this god is probably the only god in the list whose data is probably not entirely accurate, but also looking at their stats, it is. So the next god is Geb, which is the only god in the list that from an STL perspective doesn't entirely make sense. But the Geb comes down to two things. One, Geb is banned like 95% of the time. And you obviously can't gain elo if you can't be played. And so that affects his elo a lot. Obviously, if you have like 100% ban rate, you can't gain any elo, which is how the system works, right? Like the gods very literally gain elo like the players do, which means you have to be played in order to gain elo, just like how the rank system works in Smite. But that being said, he is 13-13. So he wasn't like coming out and just obliterating games when he was let through. The man was 50-50 on his 26 games played. So like, while the community bans him because nobody wants to play against him, he also did not have a particularly insane showing during the games that he was allowed into. But I would still say he's probably the one god on the list that isn't super accurate, just because I think he probably has the #1 ban rate in all of the STL. Even other gods like Odin, who were banned a lot, actually did get quite a few games played, and they ended up in a fairly accurate spot. I would say Geb was probably the only one that was affected by the ban rate. Then we've got Cubragen. Cubragen, another one of those gods that is doing a little bit better now than he was. You build all the books in middle. Cubragen likes to build the library. But he also has a hard time against just so many gods in the game. Walls wreck him. Auto lock on abilities wreck him. So many things kind of wreck Cubragen. And so I also suspect that, like, when the books got buffed, people wanted to pick Cubragen. They're like, oh, Cubragen's going to be super good now. And then they're like, oh no, he's still Cubragen. Oh no. Now for a god that has really been struggling, and that's going to be Fenrir. Fenrir probably has the most games played out of any of the gods down here in the lower section, in this kind of bottom like third of the gods. Plenty of games played on Fenrir for a very accurate representation in the data. He is just not winning. He has an absolutely atrocious win rate, actually, at 40%. He's just not being picked he's being picked often, but he is simply not winning the games that he is picked in. He is doing mildly okay in the jungle and the support role. Mildly okay. He seems to be a god that when people aren't necessarily comfortable with something, they pick the Fenrir, and I think that affects his data. I think he becomes kind of a de facto pick, and that means that the people playing him aren't necessarily that comfortable on him, which can hurt him. Then we've got the Cernunnos. Cernunnos been doing all right. I mean, in all of your games outside of the STL, you probably see Cern and you're like, yeah, that god's all right. It's basically how I would describe Cern. Then we've got Zhong Kui. Zhong Kui does okay with like the vampiric style of build, where you get a little bit tankier and then you can go the Book of the Dead. He can be hard to gank in the lane, regardless of whether he's solo or mid, which I feel like gives him this like intimidation factor of like, I can't go gank this god. But in actuality, what I think is actually happening is the jungler just sees the Zhong Kui and avoids that lane entirely and then goes and wins all the other lanes. And then Zhong Kui does fine in the late game, but he's not like the single-handed going to carry the game by himself. And so it doesn't really matter that he just kind of sat there and farmed. Next up, Kumbhakarna. Kumbhakarna's been slightly getting increased in his pick rate. As of the past week or so, he's gaining a little bit of momentum. He's not doing fantastic, but I do like to see him getting picked. It's kind of cute. Speaking of kind of cute, Hera likes to pop up every once in a while on the battlefield and try to show her stuff, and it is always kind of lackluster until Argus shows up, and then you're like, wow, Argus is a really good ability, and the rest of her abilities, you're like, I could take it or leave it. Then we have a couple of Hades actions over here. Hades, same kind of thing with the Zhong Kui, where a lot of times you see Hades and you're like, I'm gonna let him just go ahead and farm over there in that lane. I ain't gonna pay too much attention to that. I don't want to waste too much of my time. But then Hades doesn't like come into the late game and obliterate the backline. He's just kind of like a beads popper. And so he kind of falls into that Zhong Kui style. Then, surprising for me, but not, I guess, that surprising overall, we have Anhur. I actually do think that Anhur is a pretty good hunter right now, but I think that Anhur and Uller actually are kind of similar. Thank you, Forgotten. In that Anhur is a surprisingly difficult hunter to play. Anhur has always been used amongst pro players as like the default skill god. Back in the day to do warm up for SPL games and stuff. Back when everything was a little bit more casual, people would do like Anhur 1v1s to like warm up your mechanics. Cause like pillar stun is like a basic combo, but so hard to do proper. And I think that because of that, he actually is much more difficult to play than you would think that he is. Does well against Cupid though. Does well against Cupid because of that CC immune ulti that you can keep moving during, which is nice. Then we've got the Ao Kuang. Ao Kuang, not really getting played right now. He's a magical jungler in a meta that is super, super power physical leaning. So it makes sense that Ao Kuang is down here. Not necessarily a horrible pick, just not a very popular pick right now. Doesn't have a whole lot of people in his corner. Then we have got Thoth. Thoth has really been struggling ever since this whole junglers get to the mid lane before the mid laners do style meta started. He takes time. He needs a little bit more AFK farmy time. He has a hard time even like Another like thing that he struggles with is just generically farming the jungle. He's really good at clearing the wave, but he's really not great. For anybody that's played Thoth and you had to clear a red buff, you know what I'm talking about. It can be like pulling teeth, like a really painful experience. And mid laners need to be able to go do all the farm in the jungle because there's so much farm. And he just kind of struggles to go around and do all the jungle farm and come back to lane and to continue to do it. Now, another god that has been very low on this list but has plenty of games played is going to be Ryzen. Ryzen has just not been able to find the W's out here in the STL. Not a particularly uncommon pick, but I think Ryzen falls into the category with Fenrir, where I think that he's getting picked up a lot in the mid lane by people that don't know what else to play. They're like, hey, I got the mid lane. I'm not super comfortable in the mid lane. What should I play? Oh, play Ryzen. He's safe. Because he is, right? He's got a leap to get away, which is kind of technically a teleport. He has got a CC immune ultimate, good wave clear. So I think that he kind of becomes the de facto pick, a lot like Fenrir does in like the jungle. I think that Ryzen becomes the de facto pick in the mid lane, which means that people are playing him that aren't maybe necessarily as comfortable in the role or as comfortable on the god as you would otherwise expect. Then we've got ourselves a Nemesis. Sub 10. Nemesis right now, pretty straightforward. She's an auto-attacking jungler in a physical power jungler world. It's just kind of the way that she goes. Really not too much to do about that. It's kind of the struggle for that one. Then we've got Freya, another god that people aren't really going toward. She's basically just the worst version of all the other magical damage dealers right now. Chronos does what she does better. Oleron does it better. Sol does it better. There's just not really a reason to pick Freya. Then we've got Hachi, a safe hunter, but he doesn't typically bring the oomph in the late game. A lot of the times he is picked as like I don't want to die in the lane, and I'm not necessarily comfortable playing Charybdis, so he becomes one of the like, give me a safe hunter picks. And so Hachi does okay over in the laning phase. Then we have got Bellona. Same problem that we talked about with Osiris. The meta has not been kind to Bellona in terms of her build path. Those auto-attacky warrior items are just not doing very good right now. They're just not doing very good. Then we've got Terra. Terra had a moment where she was doing really good because of that kind of... There was that cheesy combo that you can kind of do, right? But that combo is pretty... First of all, it's a bug. Second of all, it's a pretty high-level skill cap in order to execute it. And so outside of that combo, I think you're seeing that Terra is in fact kind of lackluster when she isn't able to execute that kind of unintended double damage situation. Then we've got ourselves Rata Tasker. I'm actually surprised to see Rata Tasker this low. My experience against Rata Tasker in the STL has been pretty strong, playing as him and playing against him. But Rata Tasker's win rate, not all that great. Looks like he's gotten some play over in the solo lane. Actually doing better in the solo lane than he did in the jungle, which is kind of funny. So that slightly tankier Rat build actually performing a little bit better. It makes sense that he would be slightly above the next god on the list, which is Thor, because I do believe that for all intents and purposes, Rata Tasker is basically the better version of Thor. So it does make sense that he's slightly above him. Although both of those gods kind of rely a little bit on being able to go in and dive the backline and start a fight. And a lot of the assassins that you're seeing in the meta right now are gods that are going in and ending a fight like a Cleo and not necessarily starting the fight. A lot of damage potential, but if you go in too early, you get turned on to focus because of all the damage. Cuchulainn was a really good god for a really long time. Seeing him down this low on the list makes perfect sense. He's just honestly not that good. Like, I don't have much to say about Cuchulainn other than his entire thing was level 2 transforming and wrecking, and now he level 2 transforms, and like Mulan just walks at him and kills him and like doesn't care that he is raging. Doesn't care. Then we have got Horus. Horus being a physical support, I think kind of throws things off. I don't think Horus is horrible, but I do think that there's so much physical damage prominent in the game right now that if you pick Horus, there's a good chance that your team is now 4 physical, which means the enemy has really easy build paths against you. Sovereignties, Thebes, a breastplate of valor in the mid lane now with the Book of the Dead build. So I think that a lot of the times, Horus being a physical god actually ends up being a hindrance to him. Then we've got Set. Set kind of dropped off the face of the planet. It also makes sense that we would say Set a little bit lower in a league that includes all levels of gameplay. Set has never really been an issue up to like 80% player gameplay. It's really only ever been the top of the tippity top where Set became oppressive, much like the Tiamat and such. And so it makes sense to see him a little bit lower on the list. He also does okay with the current build path in the jungle, but not great. Then we got ourselves some Scotty slipping around on her ice. Pretty much nobody plays Scotty. Her biggest problem is that she's just simply not getting played. And if you're not getting played, we just don't have that much data on you. Also, the crit build pass aren't her favorite. She prefers more raw power builds. You know, like when Transcendence becomes meta, that's when she's having a good time. Then we got ourselves some Marlin. Marlin down here. Flicker isn't a good enough getaway skill right now in the meta for the mid lane with how quickly junglers are getting there. You also tend to need to get it level 2. If you get your Flicker level 2, you're kind of in an awkward spot on Merlin because he really needs his 1 and his 2, which you used to be able to get away with. But now you can't because you have to get your getaway skill at level 2 in the mid lane because the jungler is there. They are looking at you. They are watching you, I promise. And so that is causing him to struggle a lot. Then we've got another god that tends to do really well at the ultra high level of gameplay, and that's Heim. Heim is just kind of a weird hunter. In order to make the most out of Heim, you have to be really, really good at utilizing his 3 and making sure that you always have an escape path, which is something that's a little bit micromanagey. In pros tend to be really good at it. And all of us regular folk tend to forget a little bit more. Oh yeah, I should probably put that down, you know? Then we've got ourselves a Vamana. No manas. Vamana is just kind of an old school solo laner. Doesn't bring a whole lot to the table. He is getting a buff, which could help him a lot. They're giving him attack speed on his ulti. And so seeing how that affects him in the meta will be very interesting as we move into the December month of STL, and he does get that buff. But for now, hasn't been doing very well. Now, probably one of the more popular picks that has been doing horribly is Camazont. Camazotz is a god that's actually literally getting nerfed in the next patch, specifically oriented at the Smite Pro League, in order to keep him on a more even footing because of his popularity. But he has been performing horribly in the STL. I think he's a god that people see play in the SPL and they go, okay, he's obviously a good jungler. And then they go to play him and they're like, wow, he is not nearly as easy to play as I thought he would be. And so then they struggle with him. Then we got ourselves a little Volcan. Honestly, Volcan right now, really more of a Volcant. Backfire can be your only escape skill. It's just not gonna cut it. It's just not gonna cut it, man. Then we've got Amaterasu. AMA wouldn't be in such a bad spot if she had any early game potential whatsoever. Her late game that she can bring to the team is really cool. Unfortunately, she just tends to get raffle stomped in the laning phase. Then we've got Baron Samdi, another one of those healer adjacents that just doesn't have a getaway skill. And so he just struggles right now in the mid lane. You just have to have a getaway skill, even with these Book of the Dead builds. Then we've got ourselves a little Yorm. Makes sense. He's basically the worst version of Cthulhu, right? Anything he does, Cthulhu does better. Already in a meta that's hard for Guardians in the solo lane, Jorm is a atrocious support. And you know Jorm is having a hard time in the STL when he's got a better win rate in the mid lane than he does in the solo lane. That's how you know. Right there. Then we've got a Mercury. Mercury coming in once again. Auto attack jungler. Doesn't utilize the current build pass that everybody else does. Very susceptible to some of the more popular supports as well, like Aries chains tend to mess them up really good. And now we're getting down to kind of the nitty gritty. We have got Ardio. This is one that I've been keeping track of for a while. Ardio is absolutely fascinating to me. Absolutely fascinating to me because I recognize that she's not winning. She has actually one of the worst win rates to games played out of any of the gods in the STL. She simply does not win her games that often. And yet, she actually has a respectable ban rate. Like, Ardio is one of those characters that she's not winning when she's getting played in the STL, and people still be like, I mean, I don't really want to play against her, though, so, like, if we've got nothing else to ban, I mean, it'd be nice. So Ardio is definitely considered extraordinarily annoying, even though she's not really winning. Then we've got Erlang, another god that I think really thrives at like a pro level of gameplay, and he just has a harder time down at these levels. Jing Wei, you would think she would be having a better time in this meta because of how strong crit is, but she is getting some love in some future patches to help her out a little bit. She's got the safety, she's got the crit damage, the built-in crit, which should theoretically help in this meta, but she's just not finding it right now. She's just not finding it. Then we've got some Ow Pooch followed by Hebo. Honestly, neither of these gods really have enough data to make any particular impressions about them, other than the fact that they are considered so undesirable that basically nobody wanted to pick them. So draw your own conclusions from that. With like 500 games played of STL, nobody basically wanted to pick them more than like a couple games. Then we have got Poseidon, who kind of got a buff, but not really. He's just been struggling for a long time. He doesn't particularly like the new mid lane build. He has the ability to run around the jungle really fast in order to go clear the jungle and come back to mid wave. But he's not finding the wins. He is simply not finding them. Then we have got Anubis. Makes sense. I mean, Gooby's kind of a one trick. You get some anti-heal against him, and there goes his trick. You saw through his ruse. Get the anti-hero early. Divine Ruin is buffed. Just go ahead and buy it. Then we've got Fafnir. Fafnir not having the easiest time in the support world right now. Also makes sense. Fafnir, I would say, one of the more difficult supports. A lot of Fafnir is similar to Thanatos in that land hammer consistently. Fafnir good, kind of like Thanatos. Land scythe, Thana good. Same concept with Fafnir. His hammer can be a really hard ability to land. If you're not good at landing his hammer, it means you're also not going to be good at landing his one in his dragon form. And if you're struggling with those two abilities, which are basically his main abilities, you're not going to get a whole lot of use out of Fafnir. Then Chernobog, we talked about it earlier. Chernobog, basically the bad version of Apollo. Seems to be when people want to play Chernobog, they simply just pick Apollo instead. Then we have Janus. A lot of games played on Janus, but not finding any wins. Negative in actually every role. Looks like he was played a couple times in solo as well as the mid lane. We're down into the 30% of win ratio, 14 to 26. So this is not a lack of information on Janus. He is just not performing at all. Not performing at all. One of the only gods to not find a win with more than a couple of games played was poor Arachne. Arachne only had 4 games played, but she was 0-4. So not only is she extremely unpopular, but she's an auto attack jungler in a physical power jungler world. And so there's a reason why people aren't picking her, because nobody wants to pick the god that hasn't won a game, you know? Nobody wants that. Then we've got Nezha. Nezha's got a little bit of love with like the ring toss change kind of thing. He has been picked quite a bit. But honestly, I think a lot of Nezha comes down to the fact that his ultimate has never been the easiest ability in the game to hit. And you either hit it or die. Like there's no in between. You miss that, you're instantly dead, which makes it a very high skill cap. His auto attack animation is still bugged, which means people don't want to play him because he's been bugged for like 4 years on his auto attack animation. And if you go to auto attack and you play the animation to auto attack and nothing happened and you don't do any damage, it's kind of a problem. Now for the god that has the most games played to end up this low on the list, it's poor Sobek. Poor Sobek has like 70 games played, but he's got a 5% win ratio, 26 to 47. A horrible win ratio over in the support role, minus 180 elo, but actually plus 80 in the solo lane. Doing much better in the solo lane than he did do in the support role. Honestly, I think it's a lot like the Nezha that we talked about. Sobek is a lot of, if you land your pluck, chances are they die and you're still in trouble. And if you miss your pluck, now it's just you in trouble. Makes him a difficult support to play. Then we've got Morgan Le Fay. A lot of this, I think, just comes down to the fact that I think she is genuinely a very difficult god to play. A lot of games played on Morgan as well. Community considers her to be a good god, as is shown by her pick rate. She has got over 50 games played. But her win rate, right down there at 34%. She's very tough. She's very tough. Then we have got ourselves a little bit of... Wait a second. Did I miss somebody at some point? Oh, wait. Did Baka never get played? That's so funny. I don't think there was a single game played of Baka. Oh, no. I found Baka. I missed him earlier. I missed Baka earlier. I skipped him with the Hebo. Baka was right over here after Hebo. He did have some games played. A low amount of games played, but he was. He was right after the Outpooch and the Hebo before that Poseidon. Same concept as all of the other auto attack junglers. When you're an auto attack jungler in a full-blown power meta, it simply feels bad. Then we've got the Hell rounding out our gold tier at the very bottom. Hell has consistently been performing the worst of all the healers. Even when like Chang'e and Aphrodite and Sylvanas and all these other healers are doing good. Hell has always been really, really hard to play. She doesn't have a lot of the other getaway mechanics that a lot of the other healers have. Chang'e has the avoidance, Afro has her ulti, that kind of stuff. Hell just has raw damage and raw healing. And in this kind of jungler coming to mid-meta, it's very hard. And finally, the only god that dropped into silver tier was Persephone with a whopping 24% win rate. A whopping 24%, 7-22. She just absolutely had a horrendous performance in the STL. It seems that she went from being too hard for people to play with her previous kit, so her win rate sucked, to now just sucking, so she sucks. It's a lot simpler now. From too hard to play, so she sucks, to sucking, so she sucks. And that brings her down. She was the only god that dropped down into that silver tier, which brings us to the final completed list of the STL guys for the month of November, with Mulan and Cupid being your only gods to make it up there to that Masters tier. Cupid pushing a win rate of 60% with over 100 games played. Absolutely incredible performance coming out the Cupid. Couple other notable mentions of gods that were doing, pretty well in terms of their win rate with some decent amount of games played. Oleron had a decent, respectable win rate. Pretty high up there as well. Who else was doing pretty good down here that just didn't get played a ton? Zeus was kicking it up a notch. He just became kind of popular too late, and so he didn't get a lot of games played. But he was starting to show up pretty strong in the games that he was actually getting played in. And those are kind of, I would say, the notable exceptions. AMC only had a handful of games played. He wasn't doing horrible at all in those games that he was playing, but just really wasn't getting to be a popular pick, guys. And those are your gods for November STL. Tier list by their performing elo. Once again, that was Masters tier for us, Diamond for A, Platinum for B, Gold for C tier, and then Silver for the D tier. And that is how the gods ended up shaping up. And those are also in direct order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc., etc., all the way down the list. And the only person, remember, that wasn't on the list was Cleo, because this tier list does not have her updated in here. And she was up here, the last god on the platinum part of this list. She was the last god in platinum, but she's hiding because it's so spooky. Ooh. And that is the end of the tier list. How about that? What were the biggest surprises for everybody? What were the biggest surprises for everybody in that list? Let me bring this list back up. We can just kind of sit here and talk for a minute, yeah? What was everybody's biggest surprises? Sobek and Hal, yeah. Gab, yep. Gab was a combination. Gab was a combination of his ban rate being so high that he couldn't get a bunch of games played, but also performing very okay. RDO, yep. RDO was really far down on the list. RDO doesn't have the excuse of bans. She just didn't play well. RDO doesn't get the Geb excuse of not having to get a bunch of games played. She literally just didn't perform well, yeah. And her, same thing as RDO. No excuses, plenty of games played. Just really wasn't winning. Which was interesting. Morgan Le Fay, yep, she was real low on the list. Plenty of games played. In fact, in order to get this low on the list, you basically had to have a good amount of games played, and your win ratio had to be garbage. You know what I'm saying? You basically had to. Maybe people will start banning Gab. Now, I don't think so. I mean, a lot of things come down to, like, annoyance level 2. Like, Gab was doing really well, but, I mean, not really well. I mean, Gab was doing fine, but also nobody wants to play against Geb shields, you know? Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to play against his ultimate and all the CC that he brings. So he's got a lot of that going against him. Is there a relation to guys having escapes? I mean, a lot of the guys that are higher up have some form of movement ability. The only one out of here that doesn't is Aries. Everybody up here has like some form of movement. Suki has his ulti for CC immunity plus his 2. Oleron doesn't. So kind of Oleron Aries. Does Bogus need a rework? Nah. Nah. So Aries is thick AF. He doesn't need to move. Aries don't need to move, dude. A lot of them you can definitely see, because you have to keep in mind, the STL, everybody's invited, right? You've got people that are all the way from literally grandmasters to people playing their first games of Conquest. So it gives you a array of data that is accurate for the entire player base as a whole, and not necessarily any individual like points, right? Like this isn't, you know, a grandmaster list or a bronze list. This is the STL list, which includes everybody, right? And so you have to factor in that while somebody might do really good on Fafnir at a really high level, if the majority of people that are playing him are people in silver that have a hard time with Fafnir, then that's obviously going to hurt his win rate. You know what I'm saying? And I think we're tweaking the... I think we're slightly tweaking the ELO system for next month. We've got a solid month of data behind us, so I think we're slightly changing how some of the ELOs work. I think that's going to change for the gods as well. I'll talk to the mods about that as well. But for the most part, the list reflects how I felt about gods in the STL. You know, I hated playing against Mulan and Cupid because they always seemed one. Yes, all of these stats are going to be separated from every month. So this is the November tier list. Starting tomorrow, the December list will start. All of the gods get to start refresh on their elos. All of the players are going to be refreshed on their elos, all that kind of stuff. So every month there is going to be a hard reset on god elo. That way the gods stay updated month to month with like buffs and nerfs and item changes and map changes and all that stuff. So the god elos will stay up very, very, very updated. And then the player elos are going to be hard reset in terms of your ladder for grinding for some prizes. The Reign of Atlas begins. No. There will not be a Reign of Atlas. And then for matchmaking purposes, they will be soft reset. So there will still be some behind the scenes of matchmaking going on to make sure that we still get those good quality 30-minute games from what we've learned from. If I had to put Atlas in this list, he'd be down here in C tier. If I had to guess Atlas's performance, I think he'd be right down in this region. Right in this region is where I think Atlas would have ended up. So, you're going to make it your goal to bring Persephone up in the ranks? Okay, do it. Do it. You won't? I believe in you, my man. I believe in you. What's up, Bone Scope? How are you doing? Glad you enjoy it, PB. Can I explain Danzaburo? What do you mean explain Danzaburo? Danzaburo does okay. He's an okay hunter that performs all right. You know? That's basically Danzaburo. An okay hunter that does all right. And that's kind of how STL was so much fun. You can't wait to keep grinding it. Yeah, so for those that didn't participate in the STL for November, that is okay. We're going to be doing this for all of our future months as well. So if you would like to participate in the STL, make sure you are subscribed to the channel and make sure you are in the Discord in order to get into those STL games. That is where they are all made. All questions about the STL are also answered over in that Discord for you. To answer your question, no, the majority of STL games do not occur on stream. The majority of STL games happen while I am offline. There is like 12 to 15 dedicated hosts for the STL that are hosting games at all times. Different regions, all platforms are welcome, whether you're on console, whether you're in Europe, dude, whether you're in Canada, doesn't matter. Any regions, all platforms, as long as you're subbed, you can play in the sub league. And that's because we have giant prizing structures for the league as well. Our December prizing is $500 worth of gems that you will be entered into a chance to win as long as you have played 5 STL games in December. So if you play 5 games, you'll be entered in for a chance to win those gems. If you play 10 STL games in December, you'll be entered in for a chance to win a free tub of G Fuel. Shout out to G Fuel for sponsoring our December STL. So make sure you check them out. Use code Incon. And then if you're the top 3 ELOs at the end of December, with the launch of our new merch store, we also have a partnership with them, and you will get custom STL champion merch if you finish in the top 3 at the end of December. So most of the prizing is simply participation awards. You participate in the STL, you've been entered into the giveaway, you've got a chance to win. But if you are at the very tippity top of December, you will get custom STL merch for being in the top 3. And that is our prizing architecture for the month of December. Like I said, games going on all day long, morning, afternoon, evenings, game being hosted all the time. So plenty of opportunities to get in, get involved, find games, find friends. And of course, for those that have absolutely no idea what I've been talking about the entire time, the STL is our subscriber league that we started to make a league that is more competitive, has better matchmaking, and has more fun and less toxicity than Smite as a whole. Basically, we got tired of playing casuals and ranked because they were toxic and the matchmaking sucked and nobody was having any fun. So instead, we basically made our own league with our own matchmaking system. It has literally its own elo that we track. That's how we can do all this, how we have all this information. We've got a bunch of mods in community members putting in a bunch of work to make this entire league happen. Which is why we have all of this data, because we basically said, screw it, we're going to fix it ourselves. And the first month was absolutely fantastic. And it also lets us kick out toxic players. If somebody's being toxic in the games, we will deal with them. We have already dealt with a handful of members that have been toxic in the league, and so guess what? They're just not allowed to play anymore. It's really that easy. So that way you can try to get better at the game, have a fun time playing video games. I know it's a crazy idea, having a fun time playing a game. Whoa. Learn some stuff, meet some friends, and get better at Smite, guys. And that is the entire purpose of this league. And of course, it starts again fresh tomorrow with our even bigger prize pool. Thank you for supporting the Twitchiest community. If you'd like to see more videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel and always hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of the upcoming videos. Thank you for all your support and have a Twitchin' day, y'all.